4 years on, nostalgia. This entire presentation is a work of fiction. Any resemblance to reality in our modern world is entirely coincidental. I have to say that because I was given a strike for stating facts as facts which were not facts because the platform disagreed with facts that can't be stated as facts. So I repent, recant, apologise and no longer state facts which aren't facts because they're not approved facts. I thank the platform that I was given the chance to clear off that strike by submitting to re-education. I now love Big Pharma. And duly aligned with saying only what the online media platforms allow me to say, I have decided to ramble on in a world of fiction. I will do facts somewhere else, as yet undetermined, as I need a safe time capsule that will be useful and accessible long after I'm gone, or at least for the next few years. So let's engage in some delusional fiction, a fantasy remembering of what I wish had happened in a parallel reality, or which might have happened if we lived in a world of free and open discussion. 4 years ago to this day, we released our first video on Peerless Reads. As the name suggests, the channel was supposed to be supporting book sales, but instead it got repurposed as a crisis and massive scare swept the world. I was indeed deeply alarmed, not for the obvious reason, but for the fact that the new narrative had zero connection with the official data which was supposed to support it. Even worse, the official science that was supposed to support the case made by the government turned out to be a fiction, cobbled together from nothing, bearing no connection to the official data. But hey, this is just fiction, a delusion. In the real world, the science was perfectly sound, offered by authorized and authoritative sources, and anyone who challenged that science was clearly a tinfoil hat-wearing conspiracy theorist and not a high IQ analyst with integrity and a great deal of experience. If you are inclined to judge us harshly for our claims, then let us leave here the proof of a key claim. You can ignore it or fail to understand it, but it will be here, an integral part of this video and presentation, and so whatever you or the platform does, it will be a matter of record that any reaction or punishment will be despite the factual accuracy of what we have said. In that time, the media, social media and article sites were putting out the most disturbing narratives, all about exponential threats, and what was most disturbing was that they were, and continue to be, utterly contradicted by official government data and historic data. The exponential threat is just the most blatant of these misrepresentations. There has not been an exponential threat in history. Not even the supposed early development is exponential, and we'll do a video perhaps to clarify precisely that point. The following is a chart of what was available to the smartest, most official, best informed scientists and advisors who are about to condemn you to loss of livelihood, loss of income, depression, educational impairment, suicide, and those are just the accepted outcomes from their home policy. There is only one thing you, as a gifted scientist about to advise the Prime Minister and about to determine the fate of your nation, need to decide. Is the line illustrated a straight line climbing to the top of the chart, and so the exponential threat that was the narrative of the day? Or is the chart showing a line curling over, someone like a ball or cannonball, fired up into the sky at a distant target, and now curling over, beginning to peak, ready to drop back down to Earth? Because if it's a straight line going to heaven, then maybe there's a case for drastic action before the sky falls on our heads. Whereas if it's just a cannonball shot at a distant target that's going to peak and then fall back to Earth, well, you probably don't want to be on the receiving end of that cannonball, but it's not the end of the world. And so here you are 4 years ago, last night, 23rd March, as the advisor about to tell the Prime Minister either, "Oh my God, it's going straight to heaven, call the crisis and let's head it off with drastic measures," or B, "Yes, it's going up, but look how it's curling over. It'll soon be done, just a couple more weeks, and frankly that'll be the end of it." Lest you think this is my personal delusion, the Telegraph, in a rare moment of truthful telling, it had a few, accurately stated that the issue would peak on the 12th of April of that year, just 3 weeks after the fatal decision you are about to reenact. The data itself showed 10th to 12th of April, so congrats to the Telegraph for its accurate and honest statement, which had about as much effect as our own analysis or driving up to Downing Street the moment the Prime Minister announced his decision, as we did. It is now widely accepted that the home policy was a mistake of monumental proportions, which had zero effect on the issue, but had a devastating effect on the population. Thus we may be safe in alluding to such, but any more than that puts us at risk of more re-education or an outright ban. So we'd rather sing and dance like a jester, if that at least gets us views, and save the facts and data for elsewhere. However, you can, if you wish, take the risk of deciding for yourself. Is the following curve going straight to heaven, exponential as you were told, or is it curling over and will soon indeed be over with minimal impact, even if we, the government, do absolutely nothing? Straight, exponential on log scales, or curved, normal on log scales? It's a simple, trivial test that those oh-so-clever official scientists would have learned at what, age 14 maybe, 16 tops? Or maybe they didn't learn it. Maybe when they were talking about doubling period and exponential and massive threat and 80% touched and 1% of those no longer with us, they really had no idea about the basic arithmetic they were describing with such authority. You decide, straight, exponential, massive threat, or curved, normal, minimal threat, ho-hum. If it's straight, then they chose a narrative backed by their own official data. If it's curling over, then they chose a narrative utterly contradicted by their own official data. And if they chose the wrong one when it's such a simple choice, do you think mistakes were made by absurdly incompetent people, in which case they should be liable, or do you think they preferred the narrative they chose because it served their interests and or the interests of people who had a lot to gain by their decision? Or, God forbid, do you really think they can't tell a square from a circle, an exponential from a normal, and were just doing their best? It's just a slide, a chart, a delusion, a fantasy, a what-if, and it's just a moment that defines whether or not the fairies did their best to look after you in Never Never Land, or whether the goblins knew perfectly well what they were doing as they took you down the road to hell in Mordor. It's just play acting, it's not real, unless it is. You decide. We did our bit 4 years ago. It wasn't enough. But the facts remain the facts, and their actions remain part of the historic record until they're carefully modified or erased. So while just maybe you can still go and find this data yourself, and while you can also gen up on simple concepts like exponential and normal, we'll perhaps do a refresher video, then you can put yourselves in the shoes of Whitty, Vallance and Johnson and decide. Straight to heaven, disaster, act now, or curling over, ho-hum, wonderful, dying of its own accord. Ready? What are the blue cases and red deaths lines doing? Exponential, straight, or curling over, normal? The fate of a nation hangs on your decision. Is that blue line, cases, or even the red line, deaths, a straight line going to heaven, crisis, or is it curling over, dying, even as you do nothing, soon to peak and then be consigned to history, a blip, a non-event? it will take a lot more than just your decision to keep the narrative on track, like massive testing, etc. But here, right at the start, your decision today is critical. You've already reversed the decision publicly announced that the issue is a non-issue. That was a blip in the matrix and has now been sorted. Are you going to go with the crisis narrative, a straight line to heaven until 80% are touched and 1% leave this mortal coil? Or are you going to go with the it's fading anyway narrative, so ho-hum, wait a couple of weeks and it'll all be over? Roleplay. It's only make-believe. It's not like anyone would really want to mislead or misrepresent such an important, critical issue. And maybe, just maybe, never forgive, never forget, for all that was done to suit someone's idea of what was good for us. Andrew Mather, AndrewMatherExplore @gmail.com